So a question that we sometimes get is, can you use ProLine for insurance work? And the answer is 100%. ProLine's highly customizable and can be used for just about any type of work that you can imagine. However, we do preload ProLine out for every new user more for retail in mind than insurance. So there's a little bit of setup that might need to be done if you want to optimize your account for insurance work. I mean, you can use it right out of the box for insurance work, no problem. But if you want to optimize it, maybe you do a little bit more insurance than retail, then that's what this video is going to go over. I'm going to go through how you might optimize and kind of tweak some things in your ProLine account to make it a little bit more ideal for insurance versus the way ProLine accounts are typically preloaded. So here on this page, you can see we have our pipelines here and we have our stages, and this is set up primarily with retail in mind. And so we are going to need to add another pipeline here and some stages specifically to cover the insurance part of the process. So we'll go into company settings, we'll go into stages, and let's go down to add a pipeline, and we're going to add an insurance pipeline. Let's start adding some stages here. Let's add contingency signed. I'm going to assume that you use contingency agreements. Contingency signed. Then once the contingency is signed, then you're waiting on the adjuster. So the homeowner is going to submit the claim, and then you're going to be waiting on the adjuster meeting to get scheduled. So waiting for adjuster. It's typically the next stage we'd see. So waiting for adjuster, and then the adjuster meeting is scheduled, and so we could do like adjuster scheduled. Then after adjuster scheduled, you're going to have the claim submitted, and then you're waiting on approval. So adjuster scheduled, then waiting on approval. Then one of two things is going to happen. Either the claim gets denied, in which case you have like denied / no damage, or it's going to get approved. And if it gets approved, you're going to want to feed those directly into the production pipeline, just like if they sold with retail. So we're really adding this insurance piece of the process in, and we're going to move this up here. So, and I'll kind of walk through how this all would look on the front end, but instead of adding something here for approved, we're just going to do like 1/approved here under production. And then let's do an overlap stage. We're going to do production 1/approved. And now that's going to appear at the end of this pipeline, just like it does here in the normal sales pipeline. That way you're just feeding everything into the same stage here on the production side, since once it's in production, it's going to proceed typically pretty much the same. So that's the way that looks here on the stage side. This is the way how it looks on the front end now, as we have our insurance stages here. We have 1/approved at the end. And typically the flow here is you have new leads come in, you do the inspection. If it's an insurance project, you're going to have them sign a contingency. You're going to send them a contingency agreement to sign instead of a retail quote. But rather than having this immediately go into a separate place, the recommendation that we have that we've seen work really well for a lot of insurance-focused companies is just have a single quote sent stage. You could also just say quote / contingency if you wanted to. And then all of your quotes, including your contingency agreement, because the contingency agreement should be sent like a quote. It's just not going to have any numbers in it, but you use our quote system to send that. And then you would set this up so that once it is sent, it's going to move to that same quote sent stage. But then once it's signed, instead of moving to the normal 1/approved stage directly like a retail quote would, it's going to move into your contingency signed stage in the insurance pipeline. That way, the workflow here is new lead comes in, you do the inspection. If it's an insurance project, you send them the contingency agreement. And when you send that to them, it's going to move them into this quote sent we have a trigger here that's going to filter them into contingency follow-up if they're an insurance project. And so that's all set up and good to go. And it's going to follow up. There's a specific pre-written sales follow-up campaign that we have specifically to help you close contingency agreements. Now, of course, you always want to close them on the spot if you can, get them signed on the spot. But if you can't get it signed on the spot, you can just send it to them, and then ProLine will follow up on it to try to get more of those contingency agreements signed. And then once it does get signed, instead of moving over directly into one or approved, it's going to go into your insurance pipeline. And so it'll show up here in contingency signed. Now, as it moves through the insurance process, this unfortunately can't be automated. We always want to automate as much of the flow of projects as possible, and we're usually able to do a good amount of that. Most of the movement from stage to stage is automated in ProLine. The insurance process, because of that third party being involved, this is a little bit more manual, so you do have to move those projects from stage to stage based on what's going on. But it's still a good way to keep track of that. Now, as far as automations go, typically you'd want to have some kind of automation here under contingency signed. So you maybe start a campaign we can go into campaigns and create a campaign here under insurance. We'll call this campaign contingency signed. And this will be something along the lines of, thank you so much for trusting us with your claims process and your insurance replacement process. We look forward to working with you through this process. Here is the next step. And so you could edit this campaign, add texts, emails. It's right here. Add texts, emails, all of that. We don't have, you could do approved, generic. You could probably start with this pre-written template, which is just an email and a text, and then customize it out however you wanted it to be. And you also don't have to have anything there at all if you don't want to, but let's go under insurance, contingency. Oh, I meant to say contingency signed. Okay, contingency signed. And then we have this, we'll turn everything on. And so now when a project goes into contingency signed, they'll get that. Also though, on the quote template itself, if we go to contingency agreement, this already on signed has this email and text. So that's probably unnecessary actually. So probably wouldn't recommend doing that. It's something you could do if you wanted to, but all right, waiting on adjuster. Typically, a lot of companies do not want to do any kind of automations because of the fact that there's that third party involved. It gets a little complicated, but we have seen pretty successfully people automate this waiting for adjuster, and we have a pre-written campaign for this already in ProLine. So waiting on adjuster, and basically it just follows up with the homeowner checking in on whether or not the adjuster has scheduled the appointment with them yet. And so that's something that you can automate if you want to. You don't have to, but that option is there. Just in general, ProLine, for insurance, there's not as much of a need. It doesn't as much make sense to automate this process as it does on the retail side. So we have adjuster scheduled. We probably just want to set this up to stop that other campaign. So we'll just do stop active campaign. So we just want to make sure that we're not continuing to ask when the adjuster's coming if they've already been scheduled. And then of course we have waiting on approval. So you want to be following up with the homeowner to make sure that that they tell you when they've gotten the approval, right? So that's something that we've seen a lot of success with automating. And then denied no damage. For denied no damage, that's a possibility that they may come back around later and want to do a retail quote with you. And so if they do right away, you can just send them a new quote which would bring them back into quote sent. But If not, you can put them into a campaign for no damage. We have a pre-written sales follow-up campaign for this that just stays in touch with them over time, checks in with them, make sure there's no leaks or anything like that. And if there is, then it's going to get them back around to do a retail quote with you. So that's another path here. So that's another good automation here. And then, of course, one approved would have its own automations on it. So that's building out on the insurance side, building out that stage and pipeline. Now, on the quote end of things, just to get it out of the way and make sure there's no confusion here, we are not a replacement for Xactimate. If you're doing insurance work, you should be using Xactimate, hands down, no questions asked. However, it's still there's still the contingency agreement, and you can use ProLine's quote system to send the contingency agreement and get a digital signature on that. And then also, you're still going to want to have a contract with the homeowner for the actual replacement of the roof. Now, the number on that contract just needs to match up with what was approved from insurance. And what you would submit to insurance needs to be the Xactimate. However, you would still have that inside of ProLine. So we do have this roof replacement contract, but more and more we're kind of leaning towards just take your normal quote, your normal retail quote, and do a duplicate of it. And we'll just say Atlas roof replacement insurance. And then maybe you want to change some of the language in here. You don't even need to do that, really. You could use the same retail quote, but when you're making the quote, the main difference here is going to be that you don't need multiple options. And so that's why it might make sense to just have it be a separate quote template, because rather than having like a good, better, best option, you're just going to have your one option. So we can customize this a little bit. And we'll just say this is roof replacement yeah, so I mean you just need to have one option, and then when you go to create a quote, you would just, there's a couple things that you would do. You'll just have the one option here, which we'll see what that looks like on the quote itself. But also, you're going to want to just take whatever number was approved by insurance, and then, or the deductible works in there as well. But whatever number, including the deductible, was approved by insurance, and you're going to put that into the total here to override this price. ProLine's going to come up with a price internally, but you need it to match exactly what came from insurance. So you would just type that in. So if it was, $14,000, hopefully it does come in over what you would have charged retail. That's always nice. So you would just set that in there, and then now that's the exact price that is going to be quoted. You can still, if you want to offer upgrades, you can, or you can remove them. So let's go in and we'll just view this quote real quick. Our quote generation, we're just about to launch an update to this. It's going to make it about twice as fast, which is exciting when it comes to generating the PDFs. Okay. This can be a little slow when we're recording. There we go. Okay. And so you'll see we'll just have the one roof replacement option here. And if we go down, we just have one option. They just sign for that. And then you would still have your terms and conditions for the work that's going to be done. So that is how you can adapt the quotes. Now, I will say if you're doing insurance work, it's a little bit more complicated than retail. And so because it's a little bit more complicated, you're just going to need to kind of tweak how ProLine works for you. So all these things are things that you would need to just get a little bit of a understanding of, so you can customize how your quote templates work, how your pipeline is laid out. These are things that are just worth knowing in general. You need someone on your team that understands how to do this in ProLine. But particularly with insurance, it's valuable to be able to customize and tweak these. What I've built out here and customized, this is what we've seen work for a number of our customers that do insurance work. So this is based on that experience. And so yeah, if you replicate that, it's at least a good starting point, and then you can sort of dial it in, make changes over time as needed.